You got it. Technical Tuesday. We got May 23rd, and today's topic is nothing to do with the sales talk. Guys, I want to introduce Miss Nikki Tobias, PhD, hailing out of Athens, Georgia. Widespread panic. Guys, Miss Nikki, who I've known 2-3 years now, has had a tremendous impact with 2 direct agencies that she works with, but just the side effects, she's affecting other agencies now as well, which is really, really cool to see. Miss Nikki started her coaching back in 1998 and worked in retail management, loss prevention, crisis management, supervision, all things that have to do with people and learning to deal with people. She's completed many trainings and is a certified life and career coach. She spent many years, I think 14 plus, in student affairs, again, working with people, and has had an incredible impact with speaking and teaching. She does a tremendous volunteer work. Guys, if you'll follow her bio, she does a lot of work with the Georgia football team, folks in all capacities. And because I would encourage, if you get a second, check out her website. It's called groundedvision.net, groundedvision.net. It has a hellacious resume. So understand she is not phoning it in. This is real. So I know Ross agencies and Revis agents personally, and she has done a tremendous job of onboarding for those agencies. And she, again, has a tremendous depth and understanding and enthusiasm for people. And which kind of brings me to my next topic is going to be the Enneagram. Guys, I know some of y'all are newer and this is kind of surface level for you guys. It still is to a degree for myself, but I want to introduce Miss Nikki Tobias, and I'm going to let her share her amazing and talented words. And guys, I just want to help welcome Miss Nikki Tobias.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. So I was at Agency Days with you guys, those of you that were on the team back in November, and then we did a follow-up call a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to give you all a chance to ask some questions. I know often when you're learning the Enneagram, you sort of feel like you're drinking from a fire hydrant. And, maybe some things set in a little later and you wish you had access to me, and you do. But if any questions came up, I want to give you a chance to do some Q&A with me. No topic, off limits. And then, some of your folks get coaching with me after Agency Days, relationship coaching, communication coaching, how to, manage and coach your teams better. And honestly, guys, one of the things I think the Enneagram does the best is helps us learn how to coach ourselves better. I often say that me managing myself is a full-time job, and so it's hard enough to manage myself most days of the week. And so, I want to learn how to do that to the best of my ability. And then super excited, I'm gonna be getting up way before the sun tomorrow and heading to Minnesota to do Enneagram with the whole Ellingson agency, with all the leaders actually at the Ellingson agency. So happy to take what I know. And guys, Ross and Revis are just fantastic to let me do it and encourage me to do these things and to be able to miss work to make that happen. But excited to meet the Ellingson agency too. And we'll have this Enneagram thing take over Family Heritage before it's all said and done. So who wants to jump in? Who has a question? Who maybe was at Agency Days and or the session we did at your most recent Agency Days here in the spring and wants to dig in a little?
Nikki, I really don't have a question. I just want to throw this out there real quick. And I'm saying this for the leaders of Davenport agencies, but also under my own roof with my wife, Trinity. It's funny, this has brought to, the Enneagram is definitely in our lives now. And it's funny, the conversations I have with Trinity now, everything's ran through the filter of the Enneagram first. And guys, I'm going to tell you, it's saved a lot of glasses from being broken. And holes in the walls getting punched. So I'm just kidding. We don't go that far, but it is really cool to understand each other a little bit cleaner before we discuss, life, because life is heavy.
Zach's a 9, and breaking glasses and punching holes in the walls wouldn't happen anyway.
That's true.
That's hilarious. That is very true, guys. You hit the nail on the head. I know for Van and myself, whether it's our relationship, working with you guys, or even just people that we meet in general. We kind of just run most things through the filter of the Enneagram. And it's amazing how you'll stop and you'll pause and just sit back and think. I mean, I know I did a final interview last week, and I was sitting there the whole time, and it was a double interview because Renee she's going to be working with Renee. And the whole time I'm sitting there wondering like what number she was based on just interviewing her. And it's such an interesting, I don't know, an interesting thing to just sit back and think about people, because it's an easy way to give other people grace. You guys have heard me say that multiple times. I'm not the most patient person in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but the Enneagram has definitely helped me with my patience and understanding of others a lot, whether that be in my personal life, my family, and you guys as business partners.
Yeah, 100%. I know Nikki's kind of dealing with a unstable connection right now, so she might be in and out of hearing this. So guys, if you have questions, put it in the chat box. But Nikki, if you can hear me, when doing the Enneagram assessment, I know there's certain ones that you prefer, but is there a method that you recommend as far as taking the assessment, whether that is reading the questions yourself and answering them yourself, or having someone else read them to you?
Yeah. So I think you guys were sort of edifying the Enneagram and what it's done for you and your teams. And I single-handedly think this is the very best way for us to learn about ourselves and each other, and to have grace for why we do what we do, but why other people do what they do. And it's a true game changer. I think it can improve every relationship you have, including the one with yourself. The assessment that I like the most, the Your Enneagram Coach one, I just think is very, it's solid. It's statistically sound. It's very, very accurate. But I've told you all, any assessment is only as accurate as you know yourself and you're willing to be honest about it. And so I would absolutely think that you need to take that assessment, reading those questions yourself, and really being honest with yourself, not who you wish you were, not what other people have told you, but how you genuinely feel, because the differentiator for the Enneagram is your core motivations and your core fears. And nobody else in the world probably knows that about you. They might have some inclinations, they might have some guesses, but in your heart of hearts, you're the only one that really knows what you're truly afraid of and what you're truly motivated by. So other people really can't answer this for you. And it's come up a few times, and I've explained it in agency days, but I want to make sure you hear it again. When you get those results, it's sort of giving you, your top 3, your top 5 percentages. And there are times when you might get a number that has a percentage higher than it said that you were. So let's say it says you're a 5, and that's a, 87%, but your 9 is at 90%, but they're saying you're a 5, and you're like, I'm confused. How do I have a higher percentage with 9? But the way the assessment works is the first 2/3 of the assessment asks you questions about all 9 numbers. The last third of the assessment is pitting against each other only the numbers that have risen to the top. So let's say at that last third, you're only answering questions that are for 5s and 9s. And in that last third, when those 2 heavyweights were going against each other, you chose the 5 answer more. So you may have chosen the 9 answer more over the entire assessment, but when the rubber met the road and 5 went against 9, you chose more 5 answers, it's going to make you a 5. Okay. Also a reminder, we have some of all 9 numbers in us. Right? I talked to you all about tool belts. We might borrow a tool from all the different tool belts throughout our lifetimes. But your base number, your stress and security number, and your wings are the tool belts that you use the most tools from and the most often. Okay? So I have no 4 in any, like my 5 tool belts don't include a 4. That doesn't mean I don't want to be unique sometimes. That doesn't mean I don't like candles and all the sensual things like 4s like. Sometimes I get in that mode. It's just not a natural movement for me. It's not a natural inclination. It's going to need to be, or it's often going to come up in something that is just a very different experience than I normally have.
Hey, Nikki, this is a question, but and it's more of for people to understand, because I know when you sit there and you have the diagram in front of you, it's much easier to understand and pinpoint based on your number. That yes. Can you just explain again, when you know your number, you go to a certain different number in stress and a number in security? Can you kind of break that down for people? Because I think that is some of the really good basis to understand about the Enneagram and understanding it in ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a question in here too from Jared about, what is it and why do we need to take it? So the Enneagram is a personality typology system. Only recently have they come up with assessments. This actually started being created, they believe, in 1875, long before we had laptops and assessments and all those things. But it tells us how we behave. And when we know how we behave, why we do what we do, we can make better choices about, is that behavior we're proud of? Is that how we want to interact with other people? And like I said, we tend to have a little bit more grace and patience for why other people do what they do, because we take less of their behavior personally. So on this diagram that's on the internet, I didn't make it, but it's the best one. It's the one I always hand out because it has the most information in. So I happen to be an 8. And so if I look at the 8 on the diagram, that tells me all about myself in the description. But then it says with the arrow to stress. So I go to 5. If I follow the arrow, I behave more like a 5 when I'm in stress. And if I go against the arrow, I behave more like a 2 when I'm in security. And I'll be honest with you, I've been studying this for well over 5 years, teaching, training, coaching. I don't have every one of these combinations memorized. But truthfully, you don't need to know everybody else's combinations, right? You need to know yours. So I need to know how I behave in stress. And I need to know how I behave when I'm really good emotionally, when I'm very well, and just acknowledge that those things are happening. I also want to be clear that a lot of the teaching around the Enneagram says that your stress number is sort of like when you feel out of control, or like it's the worst part of you. And I just couldn't disagree more. As I've aged, I've recognized I need the behavior in my stress number. Like that helps me refuel. So my general 8-ness, which is an aggressive stance, puts lots of energy and passion out into the world, makes things happen. If I don't take good care of myself, I run out of steam. And or if I'm betrayed, I'm kind of like pull all my resources back into me, and I want to be a little bit more introverted. I want to be a little bit more quiet. I'm not putting everything I have out into the world. That's this 5 energy. Being a little bit more observant. Again, being quieter, being more grounded. And then that helps me refuel that gas tank so that when I'm ready, I can be an 8 again with all of that energy and passion and put out into the world. And the other thing that I think is helpful to know about how we behave in stress, and this makes the Enneagram different than all the other assessments, because other assessments don't tell you that, how you behave in stress. They say you just act this one way all the time. And we all know, I mean, my example is I am different right now with you all than if I'm driving down the highway, 6 lanes of highway on 85 and somebody cuts me off, right? I am not the same every minute of every day. But if I know how I behave in stress, I can get some of those, what I call pink flags before they become red flags. I can get some hints that I'm going there. For me, it's a shorter fuse. It's quicker temper. It's a little bit more pushy about the way that I show up in the world. It's a little less maybe patient or a little less accepting. And that's how I know I'm starting to move to that 5 energy, or that I need to move to that 5 energy and stop pushing all of what I want out into the world and pull back and say, what's happening right now that has me feeling particularly stressed or betrayed? And then I sort of use that information to make better choices and to decide if I need some self-care. I need to have an honest conversation with somebody. I need to have an honest conversation with myself. It gives me some direction to pull from. And then our security number, that's where we want to be. Those are the behaviors that we have that show us at our best selves. So 8s have giant hearts, but we're really protecting of them. That 2 energy for me allows me to be a lot more generous, a lot more nurturing, a lot more affectionate, caring, loving, and less afraid that I'm going to get hurt. And so that's the behavior I want to be trying to lean into as often as I can. Is that helpful, Casey? Is that what you're hoping we'd sort of get to? she's muted, but anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. When I took the assessment, it's been a while back, so I don't know the wording particularly correct, but when I got to the end, it gave me a statement, and it said that I was a very strong 7, but because of one question at the end, I was possibly a 2. And when I read both of them, like I definitely, like I was amazed at how much I relate to the 7. The 2 not so much. So I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, and again, remember when the Enneagram was created, there weren't assessments and there weren't computers, and you were just supposed to learn and study how each of them behaved, what the core motivation and the core fear was for each of those numbers. And so I use the assessment because we are sort of a culture of immediate gratification, and we like answers right away, and we want to just have the information and then roll with it. But yeah, if you read the 7 and that really resonates, then keep learning about 7s and see if it keeps resonating. I thought I was a 1 or a 3 for a long time before I landed on being an 8. And then the more I learn about 8, and also the moves from 8, how I behave in stress, how I behave in security, that is a much better fit for like that. It resonates all around. It resonates with my wings. It resonates with my stress and security and my base number. But that doesn't mean I don't have some strong 1 and 3 tendencies, right? So you could absolutely be a 7 with some strong 2 tendencies. It could also be, so 7s and 2s couldn't be more different. 7s have all the thinking triad tool belts. 2s have all the feeling triad tool belts. 2s have 0 thinking tool belts, and 7s have 0 feeling tool belts. So it is really interesting that that you read both of them, or that you could have some interest in both. That's pretty uncommon for those two things to be overlapped. It could be because 7s have a difficulty with feeling tough emotions, sad, disappointment, grief, things like that. 7s try to avoid really difficult emotions. So it could be that maybe you're a 7 who wants to lean into more of your emotions, or wishes that was a stronger muscle for you. And so maybe you answered some of those questions in terms of that interest to be spending more time in feelings, because 2 spend a lot of time in their feelings and in other people's feelings.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Nikki, something that got brought up amongst us leaders last week was, certain Enneagram numbers possessing certain traits for this career that, help some that hinder. What have you noticed in the process of onboarding that, right away what number you're kind of dealing with, and, just kind of foreshadowing like how that person's going to do during the training process? Like, which numbers do you kind of? Yeah.
So aggressive stances tend to do well here, 3, 7s, and 8s, right? Because that just fits a sort of sales mentality, this like extroverted, nature. I think 2s really like the helping part of this career. I think 1s, way back in the day, 1s were considered an aggressive stance, and they've moved that. But I think, 1s being the improvers, like having a 2 wing, so they want to help, but they want to get it right, and they want to follow processes. And so, I think 1s really like this work. It's a little harder for 5s, I think, because 5s naturally have a smaller gas tank of energy. And I think this job can take a lot of energy, especially, Zach, you're talking about moving into leadership. When you're recruiting, you're training, you're selling, you're just kind of feeling like you're constantly switching gears. And a lot of that takes a lot of energy. The act itself, but also the switching of the gears takes a lot of energy. That can really wear a 5 out. 6s are the most common number of people in the world. 6s are the most common. 6s are going to feel a little anxious at first, but if they trust the systems and the processes, in our group, we talk about, 2 out of 3 days or 3 out of 4 days. We talk about habit, skills, and attitude. If a 6 trusts the process, they'll be super loyal to it and really, really keep that, like really do it close and tight. 5s want a lot of data. And so again, as long as they have the data to support this is why I do what I do. They're going to be all in. Zach, you're a 9. You're sort of happy-go-lucky. The peacemakers of the Enneagram want to go along to get along, and so that helps a lot of your conversations. You put a lot of people at ease when you first walk in the door. 9s don't like conflict, and some parts of this business, particularly in leadership, might have a little conflict, but in general, maybe the sales part not so much. So do I believe every single number on the Enneagram can do this job? Absolutely, I do. And then it's what about my number fits best with this job? And then how do I take care of myself? I talk with a lot of 5s in this business who need to do a better job of self-care because it just takes a lot of their gas tank all the time. 9s need to pay more attention to their energy levels. 9s don't have any gas warning light. So they just kind of run out of steam and they didn't know that was happening. And so to be more aware of their bodies. We 3s, 7s, and 8s are quick to kind of force things on people and maybe want to tell people in the sales talk what they need. And we know that we're going to sell more things when we ask questions than when we tell people stuff. And so, there's some natural things about each of us that are going to be really, really good at this business, and some other things that we have some growth edges about. Yeah, for sure. And I think in the hiring process, Zach, you mentioned onboarding. I think in the hiring process, clearly, we don't want to discriminate ever. We don't want to discriminate. We don't want to tell somebody because you're X number, you wouldn't be a good fit here. But I do think it's fair to say we've had other people that are a similar number to you, and this has been some of their challenges. What do you think about that? Or how might you handle that? Or we've seen that these 3 things help people that happen to be your personality type in this business. Because listen, we talk a lot in our agency. I don't know if this is family heritage language, but we want to grow the right way with the right people. And so we want to be really transparent. We want to be really open with people about what it looks like day to day and what it looks like to want to be in leadership and all those different things. And so I think that's just a fair part of the conversation. These are some things that might be a struggle for you. And these are some ways you're going to rock this business. How do you feel about that? And just have it be, honest and transparent and forthright. And I think, when I'm in those kinds of interviews where people just shoot straight with me and where we can have an honest conversation, that's a culture I want to work in and want to stay in for a long time.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And obviously never to discriminate, but also, each person is different. I can get into a certain business that the person to the right of me couldn't. And so I think, hey, the way that you're dressed, this might be our industry. And just knowing that about someone before, it's like, hey, don't be, surprised if we have a hard time here because we're this right now, or, vice versa. So.
And there's businesses other people get in, Zach, that you don't, right? That
right, exactly.
Direction.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
People of color or somebody who's lived in that neighborhood forever versus an outsider, right? There's just a lot of moving parts in terms of, you all know, one of the biggest things is just who's the first person you talk to when you walk in the door, right? Mm-hmm. Some of those people are really open and kind, and that same business a different day could have had a real bouncer at the door, and that went differently.
Oh yeah, I wasn't more or less saying me, I could get in. I'm just saying if we rotate 3 or 4 people, one of us might get in that business where other 3 of us just flat out fall on our face. And it's just,
yes.
Yeah. Everybody's so different. So.
Yeah. Chris is asking, how do you do it? So your Enneagram coach, YOUR, enneagramcoach.com. I can actually type it in the chat here. And then you'll just go to the assessment. It is free. That signs you up for their emails. If you don't like their emails, just unsubscribe. Doesn't hurt my feelings none. But some of their emails are really good, and help you understand yourself better. And there's tons on Instagram, really great Enneagram accounts on Instagram. Lots of good information out there. Some crappy information out there. So, if you read one thing that kind of disagrees with all the other things that you're reading, maybe don't, how the internet is. Don't believe everything you read. Whoops. There you go. I think you guys finished at 8:30. It looks like 8:28 for me. So, I want to honor your time.
Yeah. One last thing, Nikki. The book, Road Back to You. Can you touch on that quick?
Yeah. That's my very favorite intro book for the Enneagram. So it's written by Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile. Both of them have their own Enneagram businesses now, Enneagram coaching and teaching businesses. She's a 2, he's a 4. So he kind of looks at the shadow side of the numbers a lot more. She looks at all the numbers from a more sort of positive, holistic front. But they give you like 2 chapters at the beginning of intro. You get a chapter per number. What I love about the book too is the first page of every chapter has like 20 or 25 things that number would say. And I don't know about you guys. I've asked several of you and you said yes. When I read the 20 statements for 8s, I'm like, I literally said that loud. Like that absolutely came out of my mouth, or I thought that today. And so I just think the book is really accurate. I think it gives you a broad perspective, but I love the chapter per number so that you meet somebody new or you get a new person on your team, that you can learn about that person through the Enneagram and then touch base with them about whether or not that's true. And then one of the things I gave to you all, made available to you all, to the leaders, is, the sort of quick list. So there's a column per number, and we get to look at the do's and don'ts for each number and where they go in stress and security, the things they value. And so again, I think we ought to be looking at those columns as leaders before we get into any weekly business review, because you don't want all your weekly, each of your weekly business reviews shouldn't sound exactly the same. They should be, you want to maybe get some similar information, but they should be tailored to the individual that you're talking to. And so, let's be, I think, intentional about showing up for people in a way that is most useful for them, while we're getting the information we need and trying to do some coaching. I love that book. Yeah. It's yellow on the front and orange on the binding. If you go out and look for it, I think it's $10 or $12 on Amazon. Your Enneagram. I'm sorry, right back to you. I also put my email address, that's my coaching email address, in there if you want to send me questions there, or you want to talk about coaching. It's great for families. It's great for teams. I just did it with a church staff 2 weeks ago. They're loving it. And it has changed how they work with each other, and then how they're putting committees together to do things at the church based on people's Enneagram number, not just their title. And that's what I really advocate for. Let's get people around the table making decisions that are good at the thing that we're trying, the problem we're trying to solve. Just because you have a title doesn't mean you're always great at that thing.
Well said. Awesome. Nikki, thank you very much for being on. And guys, I would encourage, I know a lot of you are taking advantage of the coaching. It has helped my wife and, our marriage tremendously. In fact, I'm reading the book again with a buddy of mine whose relationship, ours has holes in it, but he's bought into the idea now. And guys, I'm telling you, it's a game changer. So dive into it, learn more about it. So Nikki, thank you very much for taking your time to jump on here with us. Always nice hearing from you. And I know Ellinson's group is going to welcome you with open arms. So guys, have an awesome Tuesday and rock it out. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, man.